You've been lied to since the moment you took your first breath. They told you you're just a human, flesh, bones, a name, a job, a story with a beginning and an end. But what if none of that is true? What if the identity you defend so fiercely was never yours to begin with? I'm not here to comfort your ego. I'm here to expose it, because the person you think you are is a mask. And the more attached you are to that mask, the further you are from the truth. Most people walk through life in a hypnotic trance, reacting, comparing, surviving, but never really questioning who it is that's doing all that. They think they're awake, but they're still dreaming. And here's the twist. The dream feels so real, they don't even notice they're trapped. They've forgotten their true nature, traded divine consciousness for societal conditioning, and now wonder why they feel so empty. But you're here because something in you already knows. Something deep inside is tired of pretending, tired of performing, tired of feeling like there's something missing, even when everything looks fine on the outside. That quiet inner pull you've been feeling, that's not anxiety. That's your soul knocking. And once you answer, you'll never be able to go back, because what I'm about to tell you will not only challenge everything you thought you knew, it'll show you how to wake up to what's been hiding in plain sight all along. So let's begin right where the illusion starts, because until you understand the mask you've been wearing and the illusion of separation it's built upon, you'll keep mistaking the costume for your real face. And that, my friend, is exactly what's keeping you small. 1. The mask of humanity and the illusion of separation. Most people wake up each day without realizing they're playing a character. They've worn this mask for so long that it feels like their real face. But deep down, they know something doesn't fit. This character is shaped by fear, approval, and survival, not by truth. The illusion of separation begins here, making them feel cut off from others, from nature, and from their own essence. What they don't realize is that the mask is optional, and it's hiding pure awareness beneath it. The moment someone starts asking, "Who am I, really?" cracks begin to form in the mask. The illusion of separation weakens when they stop identifying with roles, like being just a parent, employee, or provider. Meditation, even for 5 minutes a day, can create this shift. Not because it's trendy, but because it brings a taste of stillness beyond the act. That's where divine consciousness quietly waits, right under all the noise, doing nothing but being everything. If someone has ever felt like they're watching themselves live a life that doesn't quite fit, that's a clue. It's the silent awareness behind the scenes, trying to be noticed. The false self thrives on autopilot and constant distraction, but awareness works differently. Start by noticing the thoughts that pop up when you're alone, especially the ones that say, "You're not enough." Write them down, observe them. That alone starts dissolving the spell of the illusion. This human costume is not the problem, it's the identification with it that blinds us. Imagine an actor who forgot he was in a play and started believing the drama was real. That's the trap of the false self. Once this becomes clear, even ordinary moments, like sipping coffee or walking, start to feel alive again. Because awareness isn't found in a cave in the Himalayas, it's hidden right inside the life you already live. And the moment you sense that, something deeper begins to call you toward what you really are. 2. Remembering your true identity beyond the ego. He was never just a body, never just a name, never just the voice in his head. But the ego convinced him otherwise, sold him the story that survival, status, and comparison were the real game. From childhood, he picked up labels like badges: smart, lazy, strong, weak, winner, failure. But none of them were truly his. They were snapshots taken through the lens of other people's opinions. To remember who he really is, he had to start letting go of who he was told to be. One powerful way to break this conditioning is to sit in front of a mirror in silence for 5 minutes. No agenda, no affirmations. Just watch. At first, the ego gets loud, uncomfortable, judgmental. But if he stays still, something shifts. The thoughts slow down. The person in the mirror starts looking less like me and more like a mystery. That's when pure awareness begins to peek through, when he realizes he's not the image, but the one watching it. The ego wants control, predictability, and recognition. It feeds on roles and stories, but real identity doesn't need any of that. Divine consciousness doesn't care if he's praised or ignored. It doesn't care if he wins or fails. It simply is. To reconnect with that, he might try spending time in nature without headphones, without a phone, just walking and listening. There's something about the wind through the trees that reminds him of what he's always been, aware, eternal, untouched. The more he observes the ego without fighting it, the more its grip loosens. He starts noticing the false self reacting, defending, comparing, and instead of getting pulled into the drama, he smiles. That's the turning point. He's no longer a puppet of the mind. He's watching the show, not trapped in the role, and from that space, he begins to taste something ancient, something so familiar that it can't be taught, only remembered. And this memory pulls him toward something even deeper. 3. Awakening to your eternal soul and divine consciousness. The moment he stopped chasing external validation, something shifted inside. There was no lightning bolt, no angels singing, just a quiet sense that he'd been asleep for years. This awakening wasn't dramatic, but it was irreversible. It felt like remembering a song he'd known his whole life, but hadn't heard in a long time. That's how divine consciousness speaks. Not through noise, but through a sacred silence that feels like home. And once it touches him, the idea of being just human starts to crumble. Awakening isn't about achieving anything. It's about removing what was never truly his. The false self resists this, of course. It whispers, "You're not ready. You're not worthy." But the soul doesn't care about readiness or worthiness. It just is. A powerful practice here is asking a simple question before sleep. What am I without my name, job, or past? He writes down whatever comes up when he wakes. Over time, the answers shift from surface level to soul deep. He begins to feel moments of stillness that make no logical sense. Pauses in time when everything just is. During those moments, there's no desire to escape, improve, or control anything. It's just being. This is the taste of the eternal soul, showing itself beneath the illusion of separation. And it can happen anywhere, while driving, doing dishes, or holding eye contact with someone without rushing to fill the silence. That's how divine consciousness reveals itself, in the cracks between thoughts. He's not trying to be spiritual anymore. He simply can't pretend to be small. That's the real shift. It's not that he became something new. It's that he stopped pretending to be something he never was. And with that awakening, the structures built by the false self begin to shake. But he's not afraid, because now he knows what shakes isn't real. What remains, still, quiet, alive, is the truth. And this truth begins to burn away everything that isn't it, leading to a deeper purification. 4. Dissolving the false self through pure awareness. The false self isn't evil, it's just misunderstood. It was built to protect him, like armor forged during childhood, teenage years, heartbreaks, and victories. But now, that armor has become a prison, and the more he clings to it, the heavier it feels. Pure awareness is the fire that melts that armor, not by force, but by gentle observation. It doesn't fight the ego. It watches it, and in that watching, the false self begins to lose its grip. He doesn't need to destroy the ego to dissolve it. In fact, trying to kill the ego only strengthens it. But when he sits in silence and watches thoughts rise and fall without grabbing onto them, something incredible happens. He realizes the one watching is not the voice. That awareness, that quiet witness, has no agenda. It doesn't judge, compare, or cling. It simply sees. This is why mindfulness is so powerful. It trains him to live from that place of stillness rather than reaction. A practical way to experience this is through noting. Throughout the day, whenever a strong emotion or thought arises, he can quietly say, thinking, judging, or fearing. This simple habit puts space between him and the thought. That space is where awareness lives. Over time, he notices that he doesn't need to act on every thought. He can pause, breathe, and choose. And in that space, the false self starts to lose its authority. As the old layers peel away, he starts to feel lighter, not because life got easier, but because the heaviness wasn't real. The illusion of separation begins to collapse when he lives more from awareness than identity. He stops needing to prove himself because he remembers he was never broken. And when this remembering deepens, something new begins to emerge from within, something not built by thought, but revealed in stillness. 5. The power of silence and the present moment. Silence isn't just the absence of noise, it's a portal. It's where all the noise of the mind dissolves and the signal of the soul finally comes through. Most people fear silence because it exposes what's been buried under constant distraction, but in reality, silence is a teacher. It doesn't give advice, it gives space. And in that space, he starts to feel something more real than any thought could ever describe. That's where pure awareness is waiting, just beneath the surface of now. Living in the present moment isn't about ignoring the past or future. It's about seeing them for what they are, thoughts. He realizes that most suffering comes not from what's happening, but from what the mind says is happening. Try this. Next time you're stressed, ask, where is the problem right now, in this exact moment? Often there's nothing happening except a mind spinning stories. That question pulls him into the now, and the now is where divine consciousness lives. In the present moment, everything slows down. Coffee tastes richer. Conversations become deeper. Even traffic can feel sacred. Because when he's present, he's no longer living through the false self's agenda. He's simply here. And the more often he returns to now, the more his nervous system heals, his decisions become clearer, and his reactions soften. It's not just a spiritual practice, it's neurological reprogramming, and it all starts with giving silence a seat at the table. This is why so many ancient traditions emphasize stillness. The Desert Fathers, Zen monks, even mystic poets, they all pointed to the same doorway, not in a temple or book, but in the gap between two breaths. That's where awareness begins to bloom. That's where the illusion of separation fades. And once he's touched that space, it's impossible to keep living from the same mental noise. Something begins to pull him inward, toward what's even more profound than presence. 6. Transcending the mind to embrace your real identity. The mind is a brilliant tool, but a terrible master. It analyzes, plans, solves, but it also clings, judges, and fears. Most people think they are the mind because it's been talking non-stop since they were kids. But when he starts observing it instead of obeying it, something powerful happens. He realizes there's a clear difference between thinking and being, and in that gap, his real identity begins to emerge, not built by thought, but revealed beyond it. One way to taste this is through breath work, not just deep breathing, but intentional focus on the breath while allowing thoughts to come and go. After just a few minutes, the thoughts lose their sharpness. They start to feel like passing clouds instead of absolute truths. That's the moment he touches pure awareness, and it's not abstract. He can feel it in his chest, in the quiet behind the eyes. It's not a belief. It's an experience. And once he's felt it, the mind's dominance begins to fade. He starts to laugh at thoughts that used to control him. You're not good enough. You'll never change. These old scripts get quieter when they're no longer believed. This is the false self unraveling thread by thread. not with violence but with understanding. And as he sees through the mind's stories, his energy shifts. He becomes more intuitive, less reactive. He moves through life like someone who's no longer hypnotized. That's the power of stepping beyond the mind. But transcending the mind isn't escaping it, it's using it from a higher place. He can still think, plan, create, but now from clarity, not fear. He sees the mind as an ally, not a ruler. And with that shift, he starts living from something deeper, something vast, something ancient, something that's been watching the whole time. And as that presence grows stronger, it starts guiding him toward a life that reflects who he really is, not who the world told him to be. 7. Living as the God within, practical steps to remember who you are. Once he realizes he's not just a man, but divine consciousness in human form, everything changes, not in a dramatic, cinematic way, but in the quiet confidence that rises from within. He no longer seeks permission to exist or approval to feel worthy. That's because he's now living from the source, not chasing it. And this doesn't mean walking around calling himself a god. It means moving through life with presence, responsibility, and deep inner knowing. A great place to begin is with conscious creation. Not wishful thinking, but intentional energy. Each morning before checking his phone, he can ask, what energy do I want to embody today? Peace, strength, clarity. Then he can align his posture, his breath, and his first actions with that energy. Over time, this becomes his new baseline. That's how divine consciousness shows up in daily life, through aligned action, not empty words. He also starts treating his body differently. Not as a machine to control or fix, but as a sacred vessel. Movement becomes a form of prayer. Food becomes a way to honor life. Silence becomes a reunion. He lets go of punishing routines and replaces them with practices that nourish his system. Cold showers, mindful walks, journaling before bed, simple things that remind him, I'm already whole. He doesn't have to force it. He just has to remember. And finally, he surrounds himself with reminders, books that wake up his soul, people who reflect his truth, music that shifts his frequency. He might reread The Power of Now or revisit The School for Gods, not for knowledge, but for realignment. He's not trying to become anything anymore. He's simply peeling back what never belonged to begin with. And now, with every breath, he's learning to live from the God within.